Imagine a mystery so difficult that it remained unsolved for more than 4 decades. A mystery that frustrated generations of investigators. A mystery that many people believed would never be solved. And yet, after more than 40 years, a breakthrough finally arrived. Not because of luck, but because of patience, determination, and advances in science. This is the story of one of the most famous cold cases in American history. To understand why this case became so legendary, we need to go back several decades. In the 1970s, communities across parts of the United States were living normal lives. Families felt safe in their neighborhoods. Children played outside. Neighbors knew one another. But that sense of security would gradually disappear. A series of crimes began to shock local communities. Investigators quickly realized they were dealing with someone who was careful, intelligent, and extremely difficult to identify. The person responsible seemed to leave behind very little information. Whenever investigators thought they were getting closer, the trail would suddenly disappear. The mystery grew larger with each passing year. As news spread, fear spread with it. People became more cautious. Families started locking their doors earlier. Neighbors discussed the case in quiet conversations. Many wondered who the person responsible could be. Was he someone local? Was he watching the investigations? Would he ever be caught? These questions remained unanswered. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies worked tirelessly. Detectives reviewed evidence. Witnesses were interviewed. Possible suspects were investigated. Thousands of hours were spent searching for clues. But despite all that effort, investigators could not identify the person they were looking for. Years passed. Then more years passed. Eventually, decades passed. The case became what investigators call a cold case. A cold case is an investigation that remains unsolved for a long period of time. That does not mean investigators stop caring. It simply means there are no new leads strong enough to move the case forward. Over time, many people lost hope. Some believed the mystery would never be solved. After all, how could investigators identify someone after so many years? Witness memories fade. Evidence grows old. Records become harder to track. As time passes, solving a case usually becomes more difficult. Not easier, but something remarkable was happening in the background. Science was advancing. Technology was improving. And new tools were being developed that investigators from previous generations could only dream about. One of those tools was DNA analysis. Today, DNA technology plays an important role in many investigations. But decades ago, investigators did not have access to the advanced techniques that exist today. As science improved, experts realized that old evidence could sometimes reveal new information. Evidence that once seemed useless could suddenly become valuable. This idea gave investigators hope. What if the answer had been sitting in storage for years? What if the key to solving the mystery had been there all along? Eventually, a new generation of investigators decided to revisit the case. They reopened old files, they reviewed photographs, they examined reports, they studied evidence collected decades earlier. Many people assumed they would find nothing new, but the investigators believed otherwise. They knew that modern technology might reveal details that had once been impossible to detect. So they began searching, carefully, patiently, methodically. Every piece of information was examined, every lead was considered, and then they decided to use a strategy that would completely change the investigation. Instead of searching directly for the suspect, investigators looked for family connections. This approach was unusual. Rather than asking, "Who is the suspect?" they asked, "Who might be related to the suspect?" Using genetic information and genealogy research, investigators began building enormous family trees. This process was not quick. It required months of work. Researchers traced relatives across generations. They reviewed records. They connected family branches. And slowly, a picture began to emerge. At first, the family tree included thousands of possible individuals. That number had to be reduced. Investigators began eliminating names one by one. Some people were too young. Others were in the wrong location. Some simply did not fit the available evidence. Gradually, the list became smaller, then smaller still. Each step brought investigators closer to the truth. The process required extraordinary patience. One mistake could send the investigation in the wrong direction, so every conclusion had to be verified. Every detail had to be checked. Months of work eventually led investigators toward a specific individual. For the first time in many years, they felt they might finally be close to solving the mystery. But there was still a major problem. Suspicion alone was not enough. Investigators needed evidence, strong evidence, evidence that could confirm whether they had identified the right person. And that is where DNA would once again play a crucial role. Investigators obtained a DNA sample connected to the suspect. The sample was sent for analysis. Now came the hardest part: waiting. The entire investigation depended on the results. If the DNA did not match, years of work could be undone. Investigators knew they could not celebrate early. They had to wait for the science to speak. Then the results arrived. Experts compared the DNA sample to evidence that had been preserved for decades. The comparison was careful. Every detail was reviewed, every result was verified, and then came the answer. It matched. After more than 40 years, investigators finally had confirmation. The mystery that had survived across generations was solved. The breakthrough stunned people across the country. For many observers, it seemed almost unbelievable. How could a case remain unsolved for so long and then suddenly be solved decades later? No matter how much time passes, the truth always leaves a trail.